way up to the member. It was all of us have a role to play in building a greater and more unified Guyana. And so we're going to continue this afternoon after hearing their presentations earlier. We're going to continue right now. We're going to start off with questions. And I, yes. So anyone who has a question, please, for the panelists, please just raise your hand and we'll get started. So I see all the way in the back. So microphone. Yes, you do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Odell. I appreciate that. So my question is for the MP. What are, let's say, 3 concrete things that you could come up with that we in the diaspora can partner with you and the rest of the folks on the ground that we can start acting on, whether it's short term, medium term, long term? I would prefer the short to medium term. What are 3 actionable things that we can start looking at now?
Is this working? Well, thank you for the question. I think the microphone. Is this good? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for the question. The diaspora continues to play an extremely critical role in terms of regulating, as it were, what happens back home. We have over 1 million Guyanese in the diaspora. There are more Guyanese living outside of Guyana than in Guyana. And so we have to begin to understand just the sheer numerical power of the Guyanese diaspora. Immediately, you have representatives at the state level, people that rely on you for your vote to get them into their respective offices. One of the initiatives that I believe we can work on immediately is a simple letter writing campaign to bring to the attention of your representatives what's happening. Now, I believe that we can help by having, because you spoke this morning about the message. And this is where the diaspora organizations could become very important, because what needs to happen is that you need to have one message that's being spoken across the US, wherever the Guyanese diaspora finds themselves. And it wouldn't take more than a group of people to sit down and decide what that message is, actually craft the message, and then have members of the diaspora, Guyanese who are resident here, send that to their local representatives. So we're not asking people to sit down and craft their own letters. So that's one immediate strategy. One of the things that's extremely important is legal support. And we spoke about it earlier, the provision of legal support. When you are going to engage in political work, it is extremely important that you have available a battery of lawyers that can, as the need arises, respond. MP David had to get Mr. Nigel Hughes to be able to join us here today. So legal assistance, letter writing, as well as making use of media here in the US. These are some things that could be done immediately. It doesn't require a lot of input, but the same message spread across the US is what is very, very critical. And don't forget, supporting financial support of programs that bring the information. I want to say something, and I'm glad the question was asked, because a lot of people talk about what the opposition in Guyana does and does not do. Are you aware that the leader of the office of the opposition is a constitutional office. But our budgetary allocation for 1 year is the equivalent of 35,000 US dollars. For 1 year. Sorry?
Exactly. Once you get
For 1 year. Is it? It's 35 million thereabout. 35,000. No, it's about, yes. No, I'm speaking in US terms. Yes. It is less than 50 million Guyana dollars. I'm just saying it is less than 50 million Guyana dollars. It gets less money than the First Lady's office. Want you to understand that. The members of parliament in Guyana are not paid a salary. They're paid a stipend. Very, very important that you understand that. Of $1,000 US per month. And with that, you're expected to do your constituency work. You're expected to go into the communities and you're expected to respond to needs. So I want to be very, very clear as to what is going on. So when people talk about gathering data, and I see there is in the press back home, something about the Congress, people asked us for evidence of discrimination. And I smiled because, I was sitting in the room and that did not come up. In fact, what was said to us is that we are acutely aware. We are acutely aware of what you are facing home. We have the details. What we want to hear is your plan for Guyana. And we took the opportunity to lay out our plan for Guyana. So whoever's peddling the misinformation, I hope that clears it up. But I wanted to make that very, very clear so that you all understand just the constraints that you face, even financially, as an opposition. So when you hear they're not doing this, they're not doing that, they're not doing the other, understand. So it's a catch-22 situation because the government of Guyana has peddled this message, produced the evidence. So this is a catch-22. The Commissioner of Information does not respond to our queries for information. Any information that we get, for example, you would have seen we had a breakdown of the number of roads. Nigel Hughes had produced something about the breakdown of roads in the communities. He would have had to gone into communities, paid people to go street by street to do surveys to be able to come up with that information. Because the ministries, the Commissioner of Information, when you request this information, it is not given. And so I want you to understand just the sheer gravity of it. The last point I want to make is that we do not have access to state media. Whilst we allocate in the National Assembly for state media, the opposition does not have airtime on state radio or TV. We're not given space, except it is to say something negative in the daily news. And so this is something that we have to understand. And I hope we've been able to sensitize. We thank God for people like Kadaki, who's here with us today, that use their online platform. Right? Dr. David Hines, who do politics 101. The man that's streaming this live right now, Shara Duncan. These are the people that are able to carry the message. And so what has to be in the diaspora is that every member of the diaspora must become a messenger for change, a messenger for democracy in Guyana, and a messenger that we need strong democratic institutions. I went on for a minute, but I thought it needed to be said. Thank you.
Okay. Test. I want to ask Dr. Hamilton, and I'm going to preface what I want to say by this. I have a friend from Jamaica who's a member of parliament, And when he heard of the discrimination, actually during NEMA, during the period when they were breaking down the homes of Mucka residents, he called me and said, this was Jamaica, the whole country would have mashed up. He's a member of parliament of Jamaica. So Jamaica has a very, very high level of activism among the citizenry. And they hold the government accountable. And not only Jamaica, throughout the Caribbean. We have a situation in Guyana where the people who try to hold the government accountable through public activism, they're either killed, they're targeted, their families are harassed. In Kati's case, they could throw a bomb at your place, right? In my case, the police issued wanted bulletins to me, and I live in America, right? On the direction of Bar Jackdale. Police just issue wanted bulletins. So they use law enforcement, international law enforcement instruments to target you. How do we, Dr. Hamilton, get our advocates in Guyana or our activists to conduct their activism safely with the protection of the law? Well, that doesn't exist. But how do we get them to the point where, like Jamaicans, they are willing to go to the streets, they're willing to protest, write petitions, fire the place up, not literally, but become real powerful activists to get what they want and get the government to show concern and respond to their activism?
It's a couple of comments. I want to build on the point being made about the important role of diaspora, because while we have for a long time been very proud of our record of the freedom of the press, and so we are able to speak without fear of being killed, the fear still exists. And so many of us who are advocates are frustrated that more Jamaicans are not doing more. So it's all relative. And of course, looking on from the outside, it looks like we're very active, and many of us are. What we've found is that the role of the diaspora is key in providing that kind of motivation and energy, because the diaspora is far removed from the day-to-day reality. What we see, like Ghana, you have a lot of immigration. So a lot of people leave the country as one way of coping. You know, you can't respond, you're not putting up with what's happening, and you leave. Jamaicans have the same. A lot of our tertiary educated, I was just talking to a colleague talking about the number of teachers in the American school system from Jamaica. So we leave because of a number of reasons, but importantly, outside of the day-to-day realities, you have a voice, and a voice that's being listened to at home. And there's a lot of power behind your dollars that you send back. So when you interact with families and friends, encourage them to act. So I'd say that that's one thing. We've come from a long tradition of Nanny of the Maroons, Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, and so on. These were advocates for change that were prepared to risk their lives. And it kind of boils down to that. You know, Jamaica is one of the most murderous countries in the world. That is the data. And we don't play when it comes to settling disputes, very deadly. And so, you know, my friends, oh yes, that, I mean, that reality, we sit, so yes, so the threat is real, and people, my friends and family worry about me in Jamaica because I'm very vocal. But my own mindset is that, you know, you have to prepare to die for what you stand for.
Yes.
And we just have to do what we have to do. And I always live with this memory implanted in my head of where we've come from, that our ancestors fought knowing, not thinking, knowing that they would die, knowing they would be killed if you went against the colonial system. And, if you go further back in the institution of slavery, that was your sure fate. So we would not be here unless people were prepared to die for the cause of freedom, self-determination, and the right to live as humans with dignity and respect. So that's a historical struggle. It's kind of in the DNA of many of us. We feel that this is what we have to do. And I think we have to create that culture, if it doesn't exist, of that fierce determination to just keep fighting against all odds.
Thank you.
So I know, thank you. I know that Mr. Thomas had a question earlier. Also, Mr. Basdale. So, Miss. Oh, there you are. All right. Yeah. Okay. So just say your name and the question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Derek Basio. I live most of my time in Guyana than here. And I'm not going to say much things, but I'll discuss it with some important people that I understand quite well. I know what their passion is, and I know how much they want to take in Guyana. One thing I'm going to definitely say is from Mr. Rickford, I will take a couple of pages from him, what I learned for these 2 days, right, and implement it in Guyana, all right? And he make me stronger, and I must say this, to be standing against people like Barra Jagdeo, the vice president of Guyana, where he's serving his third time now as a vice president. And this is no joke. He's kind of a bully. So I'm not going to say, I know he's probably going to look at us and look at me because, he have threatened me, and that is on YouTube and all over the place. Mr. Burke, I wish you well. Whatever, I know this is very costly, and I'm going to guarantee you I will contribute something also. All right? My dear Miss Amanda, I have learned also about you. You got many of MPs in the room here. Whatever happened to Mr. David Patterson should never happen again to none of us, right? And we thank God for an attorney at law like Mr. Nigel Hughes to come to our rescue, not once, but many times. And my Jamaican sister, I will stand strong, all right? I would never fall down, all right? You have motivated me a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Basio. Mr. Thomas, earlier today you had a question, I believe, for the panelists, and so we're just circling back to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is David Thomas. And for the past few days, I've been listening to all that has been going on. And it seems that the emphasis is on Bharat Jagdeo. Who he elected Bharat Jagdeo? He was never elected. I believe that some of the emphasis should be on the person that was elected as president of Guyana. Let's put some pressure on Infant Ali. No? Infant Ali. I'm not kidding. I know what I'm saying. Infant Ali. I will repeat it. I believe that if the pressure is put on Infant Ali, who is incapable of even holding a press conference, we will get more results because Infant Ali, when you take the spotlight off of Jagdeo and place it on Infant Ali, Jagdeo is going to get mad. I know he's going to get mad because Jagdeo right now likes the spotlight on him. Focus on who should be the leader of Guyana. And let's see what kind of result we may have. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much for that observation. I don't disagree with you. I would say that one of the reasons, well, we want to focus on all of it. We want to focus on the government, but that is the kind of government supposed to be. And yes, I agree that he should also be made to ask questions. The point is, though, that he's not allowed to speak. He's not allowed to act. And whenever he does, hold on, whenever he does, it's reversed. He just went to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and signed an agreement about a refinery. And so he came back by January 1st. But I understand what you're saying. I would disagree with you. And of course, the government is engaged, the government is engaged, the government is engaged through. The other reason why you've heard Bart Jagdeh mention is that he threatened this event. And I made it clear to the members of Congress that he did. Before the Congress, I supplied the members of Congress with a video where he said that the members of Congress who come to our events are for sale. He is wild, stupid, and arrogant, disrespectful to Black people. He would never say it to a white member of Congress. And he wanted to denigrate a particular member of Congress because the person is associated with me. And he's continued to do it. And that's why today we asked the Congress to pursue sanctions against him and senior members of the Guyana Police. So we will follow up with that. So I accept your observation, and we will ensure that everybody in the government is held to account and to a higher standard of governance.
I see we have a question. Oh, yes. So we're gonna take MPUs and then say it again.
There's one moderator.
Yes.
She had her hand up for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just two comments I wanted to make to add to the discussion. First of all, I absolutely agree with my colleague over here, because I think the persona actually lives and thrives off of the attention that he gets. And that's why I think if we took a position that he is of no strategic importance at all, he is just a vessel shouting all the time. And like you say, direct what we expect to the president, who must be accountable to the people. So the more and more we do not engage him and do not make him important, I think we could start to change the game instead of always having to play it according to his rules. He jumps and says something every Thursday, and then we must all respond to say you're talking. Extricate ourselves from that. The discussion on the difference between Guyanese and Jamaicans is a very important one. I was very fortunate to spend 6 years in Jamaica, and I consider myself half or quarter Jamaican. The challenge we have in Guyana, and it's an important point, because we have to find a mechanism. We have to have recommendations on how is it that we can encourage our people to step forward, to voice their discontent, to stand up and speak out without fear. But the challenge we have in Guyana, which I think Jamaica was blessed not to have, is the race issue. And it really is a major issue. For one generation, for the older generation, They have recollections of the 60s, and we have grown up with them saying, you don't want to go back to that at all. So, well, I won't comment further on that, but just to say that we need to, it's an important point. We have to consider it with from the race challenge that we face and what are the solutions we can come up with. I hope this afternoon, before we break, we're actually going to be coming up with at least 4 or 5 things that we agree as a team we can go forward and start working on. That's all.
Just a quick comment. This idea that there's no race problem in Jamaica is a misnomer. In fact, recently the report to the CERD, the UN CERD, asserted that we have no race problem. That's not the reality of Jamaicans of African descent. We're still struggling with wearing our hair naturally in school. Jamaicans bleach, absolutely. And the reality is that there's a color class reality that persists. And it is still true today. In fact, Ziggy Bali recently experienced some of that when he tried to book a resort in Jamaica and was told that they're not renting to Jamaicans. That's a code word, I suspect, for we don't want people that look like you. So that's a reality in Jamaica, and I just want to make that out there.
Thank you. So we'll take one more question for these presenters. Go ahead. Say your name and your question, please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank the panel for your remarks. Very, very thoughtful, and I think thought-provoking, provoking the kind of action that we need to take. Mine is more a comment than a question. I listened very carefully this morning, Dr. Hamilton, when you said that we ought to claim the country. That is what is lacking, I think, in our conversation. The fact that we as Guyanese do not feel, the man in the street does not feel that he or she owns the country. And it comes, I know that I spoke about history yesterday. I am a history buff. I'm not a historian, but I understand how understanding your history can motivate you to take action. I listened about a few months ago, right after the local government elections. Someone went into Melanie Damshana late in the evening, opposite from the government side, looking, I don't know what for, but that person was confronted by a group of people who said, you can't come here. And one of the young women said, you know, I know my history. I know who Cuffy was, and I am going to stand and fight. She cited history as her motivation for taking action, right? We have the have the handicap of not having our history truly taught in our schools. It's the same history that the British taught to keep us in our place, because British could not tell us who Cuffy was, because if we really understood that there was the Berbice Republic that was stood up by a man who was supposed to have been inhuman, right, who had the brilliance, he and his followers, to establish the Berbice Republic, right? Before our quote unquote independence from Britain, there was that. If we understood what that took, if we understood the bravery of those people who fought and who died at 1823, if we understood what it means to stand up every day and that you know who you are, but someone is telling you that you cannot read, you have to be work for them and never if we ended those, I think we would be forward. I don't say that when we speak, we must, as you as legislators, you listen to you every day. Every time you say something, we listen because we are thirsty. We're hungry for your words. cite our history, use every single time. Talk about the fact that the railway land was taken away from people of African descent and they've never been compensated for it. That, imagine this, and I'm going to say this. Imagine that here people who had been enslaved were money that they had saved and had the brilliance, the utter brilliance to purchase abandoned plantations. Imagine that. And not only did they do it, they recalled their ancestors, they recalled homeland, and they understood how to organize a community, how to create a village. There were no villages before the ones that were created by people of African descent in Guyana. There was no such thing. There were plantations, there were where the lord of the manor lived. But we created the planet, we created the village with all. If you read the structure that the people at Victoria put together, that was the exactly. So those same people in Victoria, I'll continue that example. Those people in Victoria had established how their village would be organized. And being unbeknownst to all of those villages, Governor Light at that time decided with the whatever companies in England that the railway line would run through those villages. They did not inform them. They did not seek their permission. These are people who were struggling. They had already spent their last penny to purchase those lands. They were suffering. It was hard, but they could see the light after all of those centuries of now free to, we can determine our future. And here they come with the railway and went straight through them. Suicide. And the comment was, you mean after they endured slavery, why would they commit suicide now? They had taken everything from them. They did not have a way to rebuild, but away the land, but what were they then to do? So those are stories that should be well known to our people, because we have to, you said it earlier today, someone did, if we don't know our history, we are destined to repeat it. And we are seeing the repetition of our history today. In fact, I think that this administration, if we don't watch very carefully, will do better than the British, will improve on their strategies of oppression, because they're using their playbook and they've just modernized it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sampson, for those comments. A few very brief observations. What is the Guyanese identity? What does it mean to be a Guyanese? What you have and what we continue to experience is a whittling away of the Guyanese identity. My sister here is Jamaican. The Jamaican identity is so strong. For the 23 years, the previous iteration of the PPPC administration, what you saw was a denigrating of anything that had to do with nationhood. And as a little girl, we had to sing songs. Nowadays, that's absent in schools. And what that did was that it engendered in you a sense of belonging. It engendered in you a sense of nationhood and a sense of pride. When you do not feel like you belong, you don't fight to defend anything. And that's the psychological war that's being waged on Guyanese every day. And we see it now today with this one Guyana mantra. No longer are we one people, one nation with one destiny. You see this sloganeering of one Guyana. Nobody has been able to articulate what that means. But we have flags now on the roadways, one Guyana. The school children, their school books, one Guyana. Their t-shirts, one Guyana. Everything is emblazoned with what I perceive to be an attempt to rewrite our national motto. So when you have an executive or a government that intentionally attacks your nationhood, you understand what it is that you're up against. If I do not believe that Guyana is mine, I have to defend it. Look, we're here in DC, the capital. The reverence for the flag, the reverence for their symbols of nation. Men die for their flags. We don't have that in Guyana anymore. And it is deliberately being done. You look at our national festivals. We had something called Carnival. Why? We have our Mashramani that honors the work of our indigenous people and the legacy of our indigenous people. Why not invest in that uniquely Guyanese thing and make it as attractive as the Trinidad Carnival? Because we can do it. So what you have is a deliberate whittling away of the Guyanese identity, of fostering in Guyanese that pride of place and that pride of nationhood. And in the diaspora, you have to lend your voice to this. You have to speak up because look, the messenger is important. So when I say this, oh, she's an opposition MP, they'll oppose everything. And so people are unable to see the slowly creeping psychological effect that it is having, because my 5 and 6-year-old niece and nephew think one Guyana is the motto. And so it's very serious. It's very deliberate. It's extremely Goebbelsian. And we have to begin to speak and interrupt this creeping reprogramming that our people are experiencing. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks. MP Amanda Walton is here. So I have a question for Miss Dr. Hamilton. But before I do that, can you play the recording of this is the law enforcement officer talking with me and the police about what he heard. Then I'll ask the question. All right, let's try playing it. You got it?
really does want you dead. And so I'm actually sitting in and trying to and they don't quite know who I am. Correct. Just a heads up. It was not an actual clip per se. It was a telephone conversation. So I was sitting today with a bunch of uh, PPPites, and they don't quite know who I am because anyways. Anyway, I'm not gonna get too much into it. And so there's a conversation had with him, and basically, this man wants you dead. Between you and I, actually, he really does want you dead. And so I'm actually sitting in and trying to, in fact, let's put it this way, too, that I infiltrated these motherfuckers. I was sitting today with an individual named one whose name he says his name is and a woman named she just says her name is I don't I don't quite know her real name, but those are the three individuals. On the real, that man wants you dead.
So that's what it's about. There are more tapes, recordings. But of course, they conduct an investigation. That's why we couldn't have the names called and so on. When, as an activist in Jamaica, you face this kind of thing where a law enforcement officer is reporting to you and the police that he overheard the Attorney General of Guyana saying he must be killed. And then the police verified part of it and issued, well, not issued, but in the police report said that he's wanted. How do you, as an activist, imagine if I was in Guyana, the man came to America and I'd taken him to killed. So how do you, the people on the ground in Guyana deal with stuff like this? And bear in mind that in the run-up to the 2020 elections, Courtney Cumming, 2015 election, sorry, Courtney Cumming, who was an activist that ran a protest, conducted a protest outside of the same person's office, was shot and killed when he was campaigning in Diamond, right? Mm-hmm. Diamond. And I have seen a police report in which an individual connected, allegedly connected to the Attorney General's office, named in the police report as the vehicle being seen leaving the scene where the guy was shot. So how do we deal with that as an activist on the ground?
Well, let me just say, as long as we're building a country based on the rule of law, then we have to tackle these things legally. And as flawed as our legal systems are, we have to work with what we have until we can fix it. So I would say that this is definitely a matter for the law and has to be addressed that way. We found in advocacy that we find a lot of limitations when it comes to investigating matters, and we don't see outcomes that perhaps we want. I mean, there are significant reports by the US and so on that is looking at, for example, corruption in our country, and we're not seeing the scale of arrests that warrants certain the perception, if not the reality, of corruption in our country. So we constantly have to be pushing the boundary between the legal limitations that exist in terms of the kinds of outcomes we expect with respect to arrests and so on, and the moral obligations that we can advocate around. That while we may not be able to win legally because of technical issues or whatever, we have to respect the law, we certainly can win in the court of public opinion around the morality of the issues that are on the table. it's not the best answer, but it's the answer that we've had to live with in the context of our wanting to create a society that is anchored on the rule of law. So we're not going to try to skirt. We have to respect the law in spite of its limitations. And we continue to advocate and to appeal for, on a moral basis, for the kinds of outcomes that we want.
Thank you. We want to transition into the next presentation by the next presenter. But in this same vein, we want to show the people in Guyana watching that today we met with our members of Congress from the Congressional Black Caucus. No, they couldn't come because they were doing ongoing votes. So we went to see them. And we were very good, I think, advocates on their behalf. We advocated for a fact-finding mission from the Congressional Black Caucus to Guyana. I think that will happen. We advocated for the United States to support and help arrange an international investigation into the death squad murders that took place in Guyana under Barjaddin's regime, which he just posted about. I think that will happen. We intend to launch a project, and we will work with some organizations on the ground now to collect statements and affidavits and evidence from people on the ground in Guyana whose family members were killed by the death squad. After this announcement, the Guyana police force might start throwing out fire at the border. Y'all watch and see y'all see smoke coming from CID at border. They're gonna start to throw away things. They might burn down the whole building. But we are serious as a heart. It must be an investigation of those murders. I want to also assure the people in Guyana that we also ask for an investigation of senior Guyana police force officers who are breaking the law, who are breaking US law, who are committing crimes of transnational repression against Americans. And they're doing it at the direction of the government, just like they did with David Price. And the members of Congress were all aware of what happened to David Price. And I'm pretty sure that they are going to, at some point in time, address it. We spoke about the discrimination and asked for the State Department to address it. We raised the fact with the Congress that, in our opinion, Exxon is funding political activities on behalf of the government, and the organization through which Exxon has been doing that has been conducting protests against the opposition. So in my personal opinion, some of those monies from Exxon could be or may have been used, or we were trying to find out if it was used to lobby against this Congress, this conference, and finance political protests against the opposition. And for those executives at Exxon who are watching, this is a shot across your bow, because we intend to now talk to the Justice Department to see if you guys are violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. We are serious as a heart attack. And we are not accusing Exxon of anything, but it stinks. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the government is using lobbyists that have a certain affiliation.
And also, we have asked the Congress to consider directing the administration to see whether Exxon is breaking any international or US law by flaring, by refusing to have adequate insurance to protect the Guyanese people in event there's a disaster, an emergency, an oil spill that will wipe out us in Guyana and the Caribbean. It is disrespectful to the country, and it is appalling that the government has joined with Exxon to fight a court ruling where the court said Exxon must put certain measures in place to ensure they protect the Guyanese people. The government is backing Exxon to undo that judgment. The Guyana government is against Exxon following a court direct order to put measures in place to protect the Guyanese people, protect the people in the Caribbean region, protect the people in South America and Latin America. Because if there's a massive oil spill at Guyana, the mouth there of in the Atlantic Ocean, where it meets the Caribbean, everybody going to be affected. Marine life is going to be killed throughout the Caribbean Sea, up towards the Venezuelan coast, and other South American coastal countries. Probably, well, it's going to affect Jamaica. We just hope that the Jamaican protests will be moderate. So the issues that we raised with Congress were very serious issues. We are not asking the American government to intervene in Guyana's internal affairs or violate Guyana's sovereignty. We exercise our constitutional rights, and no Guyanese official was there. This was us talking to our government, using the constitutional right to petition the government to take action through foreign policy execution. Through foreign policy execution. And lastly, we inform the members of Congress that we are very unhappy with the embassy in Guyana. We inform the members of Congress that we don't believe that the embassy executes U.S. foreign policy in an unbiased way. We are concerned about the reports that go up to the State Department from the embassy. As a matter of fact, there's some clear human rights violations that the government commits. And you don't see them in the human rights report. So we're very concerned. That's part of this conference. We're very unhappy. And let me say this. There are other areas in which the embassy has been very good. Very good relations, very good work in certain areas. But politically, the embassy is too connected to the PPP government. And now with this new ambassador, we hope that she's not going to go to no baby christening of no president and rubbing shoulders in the night with PPP activists and this kind of ingratiation with the political party in government. We hope this new ambassador will not do that. Because we believe the last ambassador Lynch, was reckless. Reckless. She might be a perfectly good ambassador, don't get me wrong. But I think she made some very bad decisions, especially going to the home of a PPP activist, or at least someone associated with the PPP who's on the US investigation. And making decisions, forcing decisions at the Elections Commission, which in our view were against the interests of at least half of the population. So I wanted to get that politics out of the way before we get back to business. I don't want to mix it up, but I want to send a strong signal to the people of Guyana that we represented you well today, and you should be proud of the people in CTID and TMC NAR, the concerned Guyanese patriots of Georgia, and all the other organizations that we had missed some. Right, what iPad, IPADG, no, two different organizations. IPAD, and we're gonna ask all of them before we close to some 1 minute. And the WPA, Dr. Hines, made a good representation on behalf of you guys. Buxton should be proud. I led the delegation, so Bartica should be proud. And we had a lot of Lindoners, so Linden should be proud. No Christianburg, Linden. So thank you guys all, everybody who went on to the meeting. It was a very large meeting. The Democratic leader promised that he's going to get back to us with what action he and or the Congressional Black Caucus will take. But most important, people on the ground in Guyana, get ready. We need empirical evidence about discrimination and particularly death squad killings. I want to assure all the family members of the death squad victims of the death squad extrajudicial killings that we will keep fighting for justice. I'm not sure how it will end, but we will keep fighting for justice. So let me say this to the PPP supporters. Think about this. If your family members were killed by your perceived political opponents, wouldn't you want justice? And tons of people don't think families deserve to know why, how? Do you think to the media in Guyana, why aren't you asking questions? Why were these people killed? Why were there no investigations? You just kill black people and just think that their lives are worthless? Think about it. To the people in Queens who want to jump and attack us and call us all kind of names that are against the United States hate crimes provisions, think about it. 1,400 of our people were killed. Are we supposed to be silent because your government did it? No. All right? So that was an appeal to your humanity. And for them to understand why we're so passionate. And if East Indians are killed by any other government or this government, we will be just as passionate. Because we believe in humanity and respect for human dignity and life. Thank you.
So I would like to thank our panelists so very much. Dr. Hamilton, MP Amanza, you all were so insightful, and the discussion that ensued extraordinarily, very important. So thank you so much, and we're gonna continue our programming. I know that we looked at the video already, but we're gonna continue our programming by inviting our African connection. I'm sorry, I was trying to make a joke. Our African Connect, Wally Akande, and he is an international trade expert, and he is going to tell us a little more about the experience with the oil and gas sector and renewable energy in Nigeria, and hopefully we can learn a few things from you about how to proceed in Guyana. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Wale Akonde, and from Nigeria. And this is really my first understanding of the issues that exist in Guyana. I think it fascinates me that, you know, I look around the room, we're all one and the same. There's just a big river that separates us. And the issues, and I'm glad I've met one or two people who actually have said that their parents or grandparents lived in Nigeria for a while. So it just confirms the fact that we're all bonded in some sort of way. Secondly, the bond is now oil. We've had a history of oil, and to a lot of us, the oil itself was a curse because it brought about corruption. And I hear a little bit about corruption also existing in the affairs of how things are being done in Guyana. And all I want to say is this: it takes focus. It takes looking back at experiences of other nations. I think even more recently, Ghana discovered oil also, and they've been able to better manage that relationship with the oil companies than we did in Nigeria. And hopefully, Ghana will be able to do the same to learn from those experiences. Lastly, also, I want to say that there is power in the diaspora, because you can hold US companies accountable to US laws, and they can't run away from that. You can ask your congressman to investigate them. You can ask them to provide in their annual report, in their annual reporting, and so on and so forth. And the shareholders also have a voice. So buy into ExxonMobil so that you can attend their shareholding meetings, so that you can hold their executives to account. These are the ways in which we now can learn to hold these international, multinational companies into account. Now, having said all that, my topic actually is empowering the African diaspora through international business and finance. And this is a very, very important topic, because for too long have we felt that we didn't have any power, especially as it comes to development of our countries, be it Africa or in the Caribbean or in South America. And I tell you that that is a very, very wrong perception. I'm glad that I learned today that there were 1 million Guyanese outside of Guyana. That's a powerful number. And let me tell you why. Do you know that if you task those 1 million Guyanese, that within 1 year, which now averages, which will average about $80, that each of them in a year contribute $1,000 to a fund, a diaspora fund that was set up by even just this group today. You set up a diaspora fund today, right here. That's one of the takeaways from here. You set up a diaspora fund today, and you tell those 1 million that in 1 year's time, the next meeting that is going to happen, people have said this is going to be an annual event, that everybody contributes $1,000 within 1 year. Can anybody quickly tell me how much you would have raised? $1 billion. Think about that. So Haiti is that in one perspective, people will say we're poor. But I'm telling you that everybody can give $84 a month. And you add that up, you get $1 billion. Now, the next thing I need to tell you about, and this is the power of the diaspora, that you can match government money dollar for dollar. And so how do you do that? Very easy. I know I'm saying very easy, but it really is very easy. Because there is in finance what you call de-risking investment. And what exactly does that mean? So it means that I'm telling you to go to a water country and I'm saying, you need me to put $100 in to build a plant. And I'm like, why am I going to go there? There's too much risk. How much is the money I have to borrow? What's the interest rate I'm going to borrow that money on to go to this place? And it's going to be a high interest rate. But the best way to do that is to find money that would de-risk that investment. And you will have all these multilateral institutions who are ready to provide that funding. So automatically, I tell you that $1 billion will account to about 1/3 of this de-risking money. So what, in essence, I'm saying is that you have $3 billion 1 year from now to be able to take into Guyana and invest. $3 billion, that's a lot of money that you can put in your in SMEs that will provide returns on investments that will bring back at least that amount of money. Another thing you can go, the World Bank says that investing in small business, especially small business by women, has the greatest return on investment. And it's true in Africa, and I'm sure it's going to be true in Guyana. So if you do that, small business investments, empowering women, empowering people, creating new jobs, will certainly create an environment in which everybody's uplifted. So that really is my first message. My second message in terms of when you say empowering the diaspora, we need to ask that question. Who is the diaspora? How do we define it? Because sometimes we tend to think the diaspora is limited to our own country or people. But, the African Union defines the diaspora as anybody who has color of sorts. And so that's a whole lot of people. So it means that you can even bring more people into your fold, just like we had somebody, my dear professor here from Jamaica, who's talking about those new experiences. You can bring the people who have had relationships with various places in Africa here. Sierra Leone is a go-to place also. So you can bring a whole lot more people into the fold to help you put pressure on the current government through various sorts of relationships. Now, the Afro-Exim Bank has just done something very interesting. They have decided to allow membership into the African Export-Import Bank from the Caribbean countries. I think that was done last year. And so all of a sudden, you also have a big bank that is dedicated to issues of countries of African descent, of which Guyana is one, in my opinion. And so I think that the ability of us to find funding, which is the first step towards creative investment in our various countries, is exponential. And so we should stop thinking about ourselves as being poor. I think we should begin to think about ourselves as looking for the opportunity of where to invest our dollars. The diaspora has a part to play in this. I look around the room here and I see people who are in various professions. Within our professions, we have companies doing innovative things. So we're talking about the opportunity to transfer skills and to transfer knowledge and information. How do we do this? we do this by organizing in a way that enhances those things that our company does and that we can take to our home countries. So I think those are the very important points that I would like to make, so that there's that understanding that there are a lot of people who will take interest in Guyana if they know about it. So education is also an important part of it. This is my first experience of it. This is my first lesson. This is my first lesson. I will definitely carry that message on. Also, you talked about opportunities, that there are no Black people available to own oil blocks. Well, I tell you that the richest Black man on earth is a Nigerian. All right? He doesn't own one single oil block. No, he doesn't even own one at all. He's not in oil. But there are a lot of people on the African continent who have experience in oil, who you can research, you can invite, you can partner with, who are running oil companies, who have the ability to come if they understand, if they know. So again, it's about information, it's about organizing, and it's about putting things out there so that people can network, people can understand, people can come and participate. I think earlier on there was a conversation. There's an annual oil conference in Houston every year. It's the largest in the world. There's nothing wrong in the diaspora group going out there and saying we're looking for partners. And everybody who is in the oil business in the world goes to that. It's called the OTC. They go to that conference. So you can beat people at their game with the diaspora money of raising $1 billion. You have $1 billion, you go find partners, you will have an oil block because you'll be able to compete if the goal is having your own oil block for whatever group there is. But my comments here are broader in talking about the development of a country and finding finance from the diaspora to develop the country. And I'm saying that the diaspora, the money exists if you set for yourself goals and what you want to use the monies for. So if you want to use the money to build schools, if you want the money to build universities, if you want the money to engage in business, to provide a certain amount of return, I am very sure that within this group, if you start one today, I'll put $100 in it. I'm not doing $84 a month though. I'd like to see it get that. I'd like to see it get to $1,000. Then I'll bring my money in too. But there's that, because if you show that commitment, people will join you. And if you show the commitment, and the next thing you need to do is to put a management in place, a transparent management in place that says, this is the money, this is what we're going to use it for. You can attain those goals. So please, people, this can be done. It's easy. It's easy as starting today. Everybody here at $100. It's the start of a fund. And I promise you, I will put my $100 today. You know, so this, yeah, okay, let's do it. Yeah. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Puts his $100.
Yeah, I'll put my $100 too. Yeah. Here's my $100.
No, we
Put it
can
right next to it.
Yes.
But this is how the diaspora should work, because we have an understanding of what a better life is. And we understand what it means to be empowered, because we have been empowered. We have been empowered by the opportunities of being here, if you're here in the United States, of having an education and having a job, and having light, water that you take for granted, that the people back home don't. They deserve that life too. last thing I want to talk about has to be what these impediments are, because you need to understand that. I don't know how much it costs to go to Guyana. Can someone tell me? Okay, $1,200 flying economy. How many hours does it take? 5 hours. That's a long way to go on 1,200 on the straight jacket seat. Travel to our countries are still very expensive. So it's very difficult if you can't travel, if you can't meet people, to aid development. So we need to collectively plan, the diaspora in itself, plan on how we can begin to make travel more affordable and easier so that we can quickly go to Guyana. And the more they see us, the more that we're involved in their lives, the more we can influence them to do the right thing. But because they know you only come once in 2 years, and you only come for a minute and you lose focus, they don't take you seriously. They don't take you seriously in business. They don't take you seriously in democracy. They don't take you seriously in influence. Being able to go often changes that dynamic. And I don't even know if how to vote. Right. A lot of, and that's the legacy of West. Every Western society allows their citizens to vote from outside the country. But the legacy of the West is that a lot of our countries have this mindset that if you're out, you can't vote in. And so it allows those Western countries maintain control of who they put in power, because they know that your minds when you're out are more enlightened. And so they want to keep that enlightenment out instead of bringing it in. So you need to understand that part also, to participate in that push for your participation in where your money goes. Because you're bringing money, and money talks. So show up first with money. Bring your 1 billion, and it will be matched by the IFC, the World Bank. They'll match that money. The Exim Bank here in the United States, they will match that money. And with that, you'll be able to have influence, I am sure. So I thank you, and take questions.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So we will take questions, but I have a question first. So I know that you mentioned issues of corruption in your country. I mean, you all have been oil rich for a very long time. I think since the 1960s or so.
50. We had oil at 58.
Okay, so you've been oil rich for a very long time. So I would like for you to paint a picture for us about how that, what I'm calling oil rich, how that wealth from a natural resource in your country, how has it benefited like the everyday Joe Schmo? What has been done? Say it again. Well, I'll let the rest. I don't want to call him, but I'll let him answer. Whether it's yes or no. How has it been used to address the social issues in your country?
Thank you very much. I think there are two. If you look at Nigeria as a specific case, there are a lot of attendant issues, but oil, we had too much of it for a minute. There was just too much money. We didn't know what to do with it. We had a president who says that Nigeria's problem was not money, it was how to spend it. A lot of people might not even realize we used to lend money to countries. We lent money to the United Kingdom. It's there in 1967, I believe it was. We lent money to the UAE. We were lending money because we had a rural population that didn't really need the money. We were self-sufficient in food. But Nigeria is a very blessed nation. We have no natural disasters except human ones. Really, we don't. And it's not an incidence why Nigeria is the most populous black nation on earth. It's because we have a confluence of two rivers in Nigeria and we have arable land. And it's that elbow of Africa that has always had that food. I mean, food is abundant in Nigeria. Food rots, so there are no investments in that area of it. But we don't have that. So the problem coming back is that there was too much money, and so there was too much loose money. There's still too much loose money. You have people stealing $1 billion and nobody blinks, but that's a lot of money. And so the issue is that oil has allowed us to lose focus on development. Prior to oil, we had great development. We had we had uniform development across the country, but now we're trying to get back to that, and so it's very, very important to have systems in place to deal with new money that Guyana is going to also suddenly receive. And money, the oil money comes with one thing: corruption. So you have to be ready to guard against that because just too much money and there's poverty across these lands that have these monies.
Oh yes. So just pass the microphone to her. Thank you for responding to that. But it's a little unfortunate because what I'm hearing is that having too much money, uh, there's a downside to it, which I mean, which is in essence what you just said, that there's that downside to having too many resources, basically having it too good to the point. Well, actually, the point that you're glaringly making is the importance of management of the resources. And so I think that all the members of the opposition who are here should take note of that and ensure that because they've been oil rich for a very long time, and there's still social issues that include, lots of poverty, etc. So how do we ensure that doesn't happen again is something that our MPs should be thinking about. So we're going to take a question. Please say your name and ask the question, okay?
So my name is Juliet Adams. I'm 100% Guyanese, even as a U.S. citizen. So, and I have also worked on a project with the Niger Delta area in terms of giving greater visibility in the U.S. in marketing the lack of funds that go to the ordinary citizens in Nigeria. So I did have a touch of the oil industry in Nigeria. My question to you is, how are you going to work with us? Are you willing to work with us in this diaspora fund? Because money speaks in America. I've discovered from my relationships with Congress, with the World Bank, with IMF, wherever I go, money speaks. And especially like how a group of us went on the Hill When the word gets back, there's a diaspora fund that came out from this conference. Guyana is going to blink and wink. Congress is going to start getting busy. We want that fund started now. Many of us in this room, we have investments in other companies. I have in my Exxon, I have in Berkshire Hathaway. We want it now. We have to show we can manage money. Like we need to go back. Remember, we built Victoria, but two and hand, we must do that today. I have my $100. I'm willing to put it to $200, and I want to match me plus multiply by 5. Today. And sir, you got to help us because you sow the seed and we willing for the forest. We don't want no little baby trees. We want a forest, and that's what we're going to take to Congress, and we're going to take to Guyana, to all the Jagdios and the Alis and whoever, and to the people. We're going to let them know we serious about money too. Thank you.
Is there another question for Wally? Oh, yes, MP Manza.
Thank you. Oh, I should probably start. Thank you. I missed a part of the presentation, so forgive me if what I'm about to ask you might have referenced. But for the benefit of our audience here, could you, mention some of the avenues for synergies between Guyana and Africa? Later in the year or this next month, there's the Afri-Exim Bank meeting in Guyana, and the range of opportunities that would present for us. So could you please, for the benefit of us here, what are some of the ways that you see us being able to synergize, to harness your experience, and to be able to make sure that we are informed by that experience?
Thank you very much for that question. I think 3 ways. The first way is, and I don't know if this is going to be driven by the diaspora, but there needs to be a Guyana, maybe Nigeria business forum, which will now create the opportunity for Guyanese business people and Nigerian business people to be able to meet and exchange ideas. That's one way. And then the other way is to, I'm not sure where an embassy is and if there's an embassy at all in between countries, but that's also a good way for business people to look towards people who have the resources to be able to come back in and bring those skill sets that have been set up to aid the opportunities that might present themselves within Guyana. For example, there would be a company in Ghana, a local company in Ghana, or a local company in Southern Africa, or in Angola, or Nigeria. These are oil producers who will have the expertise that they're looking for in a wide variety of things, like providing tugboats, something as simple as providing tugboats, equipment yard, simple things like that that don't require expertise but require money to be able to get done in the shortest possible time, that you can then begin to present to these multinational companies, both locally and to their headquarters, that there's this ability and you want to contract from there. So those are the ways in which I see. And then to define, I mean, I know oil and gas now. I don't know what other areas that we talked about cotton earlier on. I'm not sure if their cotton mills are still functional. One of the things I also know is that I don't know if you guys are doing sugar. There's there's a huge requirement of sugar on the African continent. So there is that kind of trade that can go on. But a lot of times what we find is that especially Brazil produces a lot of sugar, but then you have to first of all go to the international market before it comes down here, as opposed to direct trade. So you can do those direct trade relationships and find them within countries that have these abilities. So that's another way in which you can foster trade, foster. But I keep saying it that the diaspora has the financing, because at the end of the day, it comes down to money. Financing to finance that sugar plantation in Guyana that might have died 10 years ago, but can be revived and resuscitated because there is a market in Ghana for sugar that you can sign a long-term contract for. And that and then the one that provides the financing for it. There's so
Okay. So the timing is, we're having so much fun, but times are going, and I would
Before some of, some of the issues we want to pursue with Wale are so sensitive. We're gonna pursue them with him personally, and so we can have discussions. And what I would like to see is, and this is something we discussed on Capitol Hill. I omitted to mention that black businesses in Guyana don't get support. Many black businesses are dying because they don't have financing to expand and grow. And that's something we discussed, where we ask the Congress to have the administration or opportunities for funding for black business in Guyana so they can grow and expand and flourish. So it is along that line that particularly I have an interest in, and many of you guys don't know who this gentleman is, but he gets governments elected in Africa. You heard me? He gets governments elected in Africa. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. And so he has the ability to help black businesses in Guyana and even in other countries. And we want to discuss that with him. I also want to let you guys know that we have a particular interest in businesses in the diaspora, people in the diaspora, exactly what he said, doing business
Yes, over there.
Mr. Roysdale Ford.
Brazil is, I think, step out a bit.
Okay.
Probably somebody gotta get in. You see, Victoria and Puma, John, they can never separate. It's too. Is that Golden Road, man? You know, the park. Yeah, I see.
Okay, can we have your attention, please? So, Mr. Errol English. Hello, can we have your attention, please, everybody? Don. This is very interesting. You might want to sit listen to it. Dominique? So let me introduce you to Mr. Errol English. Everybody, could you step inside, please? Delegates, step inside and close the door, please. Let's start calling some names. Who are the people out there? Roysdale Ford. We can't skin up David. Come in. This is important. We need everybody inside. We can't skin up the attorney. We can skin up Mr. Morgan. All right, good. They're taking their seats. Anybody else outside? Okay. He's there. Close the door, please. All right, let me introduce you to Mr. Errol English, who's a delegate from New Jersey, who will read a resolution of the conference and move it, and we'll have to get a seconder, and then we roll the vote. Mr. English.
Resolution of the Washington Conference of Guyana. On Guyana. I read, whereas the Washington Conference of Guyana acknowledges the murder and extrajudicial killing of over 1,400 young Black men by phantom death squads organized by the Barrett Jagdeo PPP administration and other successive PPP administrations. And whereas, as highlighted by Vice News, Barrett Jagdeo has been involved in multiple acts of intimidation and extortion, in that he demands and extorts bribes from companies wishing to invest in Guyana in return for contracts and provision of other government services. And whereas Barrett Jagdeo, along with members of the PPP administration, have committed transnational crimes, given that he has made terroristic threats against members of the US Congress. And whereas Barrett Jagdeo has abused his power and position by politicizing the Guyana police force, systematically reducing its independence, creating death squads and other vigilante forms of policing to terrorize, maim, and murder Guyanese citizens. But be it therefore resolved that this Washington Conference on Guyana petitions the US Congress to impose sanctions against Barrett Jagdeo for these extrajudicial killings and bribery. Be it further resolved that this conference petitions the US State Department of Conduct to conduct a fact-finding mission to hold Barrett Jagdeo accountable and to monitor Guyana for continued qualification. Is that correct? Continued qualification under the U.S. Foreign Assistance Act of 1961. I hereby move that this resolution be adopted by this conference today. It's been seconded. Is there a third?
Seconded by, what's your organization?
I represent IFAC.
Come. Where's Kadaki?
My name is Lawrence Houston. I'm a representative of the Institute for Action Against Discrimination in Guyana, and I'm also a victim of the atrocities of the PPP administration. My son was killed in 2001 by the extrajudicial killer squad, the Black Clothes Police. And for 20 plus years, we've been waiting for justice. So I second it with the fullest emotion and representation of all those other persons who have lost families. Thank you.
Kadaki Amsterdam is here too. He traveled all the way from Guyana. So we'd like him to speak briefly then before we vote.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, wonderful people. The 2 days have been instructive. I've heard a lot. I've seen a lot. And when I say I've seen a lot both here and from where I am in Guyana. Because as you're aware, I host the Guyanese Morning Time on social media, Facebook Live. And I use that program to highlight a lot that is happening in Guyana. I hear we're going to talk about discrimination and dispossession. That's close to me. We talk about the houses, the homes that were destroyed in Mocha, for example. I want us, when we talk about these things, to realize the not immediate but long-lasting impact of them. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Homes and land represent capital. It represents the future for our children. If you don't have homes and you don't have lands, you don't have capital, you can't invest in education, you can't invest in business. You basically find yourself on the periphery of society. What the PPP is obviously doing is working to ensure that Afro-Guyanese in particular are removed from mainstream society. Not so long ago, I went to a place we call Haslington North. There's a co-op society there. They have lands equivalent to house slots for about 90 persons. The members are predominantly African Guyanese. The Indo community of Enmore, the residents there came out and agitated to stop the development of those lands. Anil Nandlal, as Attorney General, they called him as their area representative. He turned up there. He, along with officials of the Lands and Survey and Housing and so on, and they looked at the documents, and on camera, because I was broadcasting live as I usually do, Anil admitted that these lands belong to the co-op, and there's nothing he can do to stop them from developing it. But less than 24 hours later, Anil Nandal instructed the Lands and Survey Department and Housing to put up no trespass signs on those lands. What is in closed doors or behind closed doors is, I know it is the co-op's land, but our supporters have to be appeased. We gotta do something. That's just an example of what is happening. Schools reopened about 3 weeks ago. There are 2 nursery schools in Annandale. There's one on Annandale South. We call it the Eastville Nursery. I think it was constructed under the coalition government. It caters primarily to residents of Upston South, Annandale South. Annandale South is predominantly African Guyanese. The other nursery school is on the north of the public road, Annandale North. It caters primarily to an Indo-Guyanese population. when schools reopened, Annandale, the Neighborhood Democratic Council is controlled by the PPP. They usually are responsible for preparing school grounds and so on for when school reopens. When schools were reopened, the school grounds of the Annandale Secondary Annandale Nursery located in the north was well manicured and everything, ready for the children to attend. But Annandale South, the Eastville Nursery, which catered primarily to African Guyanese students, was left with tall shrubs and population of what we call razor grass. A lot of us here are Guyanese. We know what is razor grass. I'm just going to leave that there for you so that you can understand what discrimination and dispossession really look like in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadaki. I understand that somebody, Dr. Hines, you recognized?
Yeah, I just want, before we vote, to make a slight amendment to the motion.
So Dr. Hines wishes to move an amendment to the motion.
Yeah.
Proceed, sir.
To say sanctions.
Who's taking the minutes? Don?
Where we say sanctions to add the following. And other such appropriate actions.
Sanctions,
so sanctions
and
other
such
appropriate actions. So that's and the justification here is that we don't confine it to sanctions.
Sanctions, correct. Anybody wishes to second that motion for the amendment? Mr. Thomas? Okay, so all in favor of the amendment to the motion, say aye. All opposed? The amendment is accepted. So now I put on the floor the full motion as read by Mr. English of New Jersey. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The motion is carried. So we will convey this in a letter to the United States Congress. Thank you very much. Melanie?
Thank you so much. So we combined panel the last two panels of the afternoon, and like we said, we're going to be addressing corruption, dispossession, discrimination, etc. And the gentleman who spoke, I don't want to butcher your name, he just touched on some of those issues, and our panelists are preparing to do the same. So presentations, 4 minutes each. I will so indicate when it's time. So please go ahead, and we'll have a discussion afterwards. Yeah, we'll have a discussion afterwards. So why don't you start us off? Since you're right near me, Mr. Dinarayan Ramsuru.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I want to say that I'm very much pleased and delighted to be among you, and it's my first experience in the diaspora of such a magnitude. And for the past 2 days, the journey has been really useful and successful for me, because this fight is not only on one side, but it's everybody fight, and we're going to fight it together. I want to recognize a very special friend that always encouraged me, and when I was coming to this session, that prayed and says that no matter how little it is, that we can topple the big things. So I just wanted her to stand, Madam Skid. We call her the elder. She's a very good friend of mine, and she's always encouraged me and my family to stay strong, stay strong, stay strong, stay strong. And you know what that means. I'm gonna touch quickly on some points that because it's been a long day, a long 2 days, and everybody's tired, but we're gonna get through this quickly. And I wanted to start with this thing that we call Sugate. And many of you remember that Sugate issue, where a senior official in government was found guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. And our panelists in the early morning that spoke about the revenue that we got. And if such a senior person in government are involved in this kind of corruption, then we are heading down a path of no recovery. And this is no other than the Vice President of Guyana. We have unearthed recently, and that is one of it, that we have people who are being what you call gatekeepers. Gatekeepers to this empire that they're creating so dangerously, that we're creating what we call oligarchs in our country. That is going to suppress people, not only of the African descent, but the other persons who don't have a voice to speak, the Amerindian, the other East Indian groups of the smaller communities will be suppressed, because when you create this oligarch, there's no saying. We have unearthed another issue which is topical for us and is currently ongoing, where an audit found 214 million US dollars has been reduced to 3 million US dollars, and putting small peoples, or I would say the department, under the bus to take the lash, that's what we call it, so to speak, for this kind of crimes, this kind of financial crimes. How can you, in one press conference, say that the GRA of Guyana is responsible for this audit, and that institution accept this recommendation of the $240 million? But another department in the Ministry of Natural Resources overnight reduce it to $3 million. You have to understand what we're dealing with here. The governance in Guyana is in a terrible state. The administration of this current government in Guyana is very poor. For the 23 years that we're in government, it's recorded the very poorest in administration in the history of Guyana. Comes 5 years now, 3 years now, and it's still repeating those mistakes. Because you know what? That is the modus of operandi. This is how they operate. They cannot change that. They cannot change that. I know how hard they try, no matter how much money they have. We can increase this royalty to 50%, and they still can't manage that economy. Because the way that they're doing it is wrong. They have nothing of inclusivity. And I sign my name next to the photo, and there's a reason why I signed it there. Because they don't recognize the one people, the one nation, and the one destiny that we are wanting to do. And that's where they're failing. I know I'm very present time, but the political affiliations, when we talk about exclusions, whoever associated with us will be excluded from this oligarch or whatever they want to create. They're all supporting their friends and family, and anybody associated with us will be criminalized. And they tried so, I would say stupidly, as Rick Ford put it, with our friend and colleagues, David Patterson. But we'll fight. We'll fight. I want to end with this here by saying that the diaspora, you, have a very important role to play. You must understand that your role is so powerful because you are sometimes larger than us in Guyana. We had a strategy when we were in government, a diaspora strategy we were developing to ensure that the second, third, and fourth generation in the diaspora being a part of Guyana, that you can able to have a passport. We were working on that strategy, but for now, I cannot tell you where that strategy is. But to show you, you cannot, you know what they're doing? They are going to bring in people from other countries to take over Guyana and not looking in the diaspora where you have all the skill sets and have all the expertise to deal with many of the issues that we have in Guyana. But they don't want to recognize that because you know what? They always come down to the vote. They're looking to the vote. But guess what? In 2025, we're going to topple them. Mark my words. So I want to thank you very much. I know you're tired and I repress the time. I want to thank you very much for me being here. And I hope that we continue to have more of this session of engagement. Thank you very much.
MP Nima Beth. Ubuntu. I am because we are. I want to spend my 4 minutes, and I'm working with time, so I ask my comrade to time me. I must say thanks to those persons who would have made it possible for me to be here at the conference. I could not have been here without the help of people, so I'm happy to be here. It's only in Guyana. You would find 9 families, 32, a total being 20 children and 12 adults, will be graded down and their remains buried. So KNView is supposed to be a lost community in Guyana. But I want the PPPC administration to know KNView will live forever. They will live forever. Children were born there, families were raised for 30 years, and even though you came with your graders and did what you do, it will not stop us from striving. Today, we have families who are sleeping on the grounds of their relatives still after 8 months. We have a young woman who lost her job and still fighting to provide for her child. We have a businesswoman who is still striving with her business in the best way she can. I am proud of the people of KNView because they come from strong roots. They're proud Africans. And just like our ancestors, they will rise. And Mr. Ali, you will make it right and give them what is due. For the people of Ilfut, 17 homes were graded down. 43 lives, 43 children were displaced there. Some of them still living in a plastic house. Some of them still living under a broken down shelter. And they are there. So the government of Guyana have to fix it. I am happy for this conference because it gives me strength. It gives us strength and motivation to know that we have to keep working. We have to keep working. We're dealing with a demonic government that does not care about our people. And we should not lie down on our backs and allow this PPPC regime to continue doing the foolishness they're doing to our people. We will rise. We will stand to defend our people. I am not broken. You should not be broken. Let us think positively. We cannot turn them. We can get them out. We just have to work collectively. We just have to put our strategies together. And trust me, they will be out. I am so thankful for this opportunity to represent our people. The people of KNView are people who are economically empowered. Mark, a farmer, had 75 pigs. He had vegetables and all of that, duck, fowl, turkey, all of that he was rearing.
Roxanne, who gave up teaching to do farming to take care of her family. If she had sold all her cattle as the government wanted, today her granddaughter would not have been able to have her own gift, which was a cow given to her, and then the cow dropped a few months later. These are things and these are stories you and I must be motivated by to stand for our people. It will be in Guyana where the diaspora and the people will come together and put the current government on their knees. They need to be out. We need to be our brother's keeper. We need to keep seeking after all the possibilities to show our people that we can stand and we will rise. Today, I thank you. And I pray that as we continue to deliberate, that we will be motivated and encouraged. God bless you.
Thank you so much. MP Kathy Hughes, please take the podium.
This is a sad and difficult part of our program, just to hear the realities and the stories. And unfortunately, I don't bring any good news either. I do want to say, though, that in Guyana, just because of the structure of our economy, whereby so much of the monies that can be earned are garnered through government contracts. The allocation of government contracts is one of the key areas that we see corruption and, of course, exclusion. So I'm not going to go through all the slides, but there are a few important slides that I want us to go to. And we're starting off with 2023. And this is to give you an idea of the allocation of road contracts. And this is in Region 5. And I want everyone to understand that I am not these are the facts. For a very long time, the PPP have said that it is a myth, it is our illusion that there's any kind of discrimination based on ethnicity or race. And so we've had some key people that have been researching and have been collecting the facts. And one of those persons is in this room, and I just want to say thank you to him. He knows who he is. As you can see here, we're talking about 30 roads in Region 5. 23 of them have gone to an area called Bushlot. And of course, Bushlot is a very heavily Indian dominated community. And you will see that we've had one in number 3, in number 30, which is an African village, one contract in Lovely Lass, a mixed community, in 28, one African, and it goes on. Would you go fast forward to 2 slides, please? I'll tell you when to stop. Oh no, the one before. Good. So in a summary, 76% of the funding for road contracts have gone to an Indian community so far in 2023. 16% has been awarded to African communities, 6% to mixed communities. And unfortunately, our indigenous Amerindian communities are not even in the game. Next slide, please. And instead of apologizing and saying, as would happen in this country or in any other normal country, this cannot be so, we're going to refute this information. The government has not denied this at all. This statement came from the Vice President. At least some villages are getting roads here that are Afro-Guyanese and mixed villages. So we don't respond by saying, this is a major problem and we're going to fix it. We say at least some villages get in. At least they get in 2 or 3. Can you go on to the next slide? Ministry of Housing, but I don't have that much time, so I want to go forward. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Amanza. They're just saying that Amanza's given us some time. So we want to look at central housing and planning. And again, it's a road project. So these are the three major projects, and look at the amount. We're talking about projects that are 11 billion, 2.3 billion. In Eccles, the road project, 13.3 billion. Not million, right? So even if you divide in by $200, you know how much US we're talking about. Next slide. This is the allocation of those contracts. And you will see the communities that it has gone to and the contractors. We have 849 million VR Construction and Indian Guyanese. We go on to Avinash and Indian Guyanese. And this one, Lahore Construction Services, actually had no previous experience as a construction company. We actually checked when the company was registered. So $2.1 billion. That's a Chinese and mixed community. Not one. Not one. Is there any African representation or indigenous? And what we're saying is that if you have this kind of data, and whether the problem that has resulted in this is historical, there must be something that is done to fix it. Because what we have done is we have now created an uneven platform, an uneven environment within which a whole group of people are being systematically excluded. When they get the contract for 2-point-something billion and can purchase immediately, because we've got cases of corruption where before the contract is even started or completed halfway through, individuals have collected the largest portion of the contract. So you collect half the money, you then with half of how much ever billion can go and buy all the equipment. And then it ties you into ensuring that you're the only one that will qualify for these contracts. Because as we're seeing, the contract will say that you must have these minimum bits of equipment, the minimum requirement. So you are excluded for how long? Posterity, probably. Next slide. I'll keep going on. There's some other examples I want to look at. I'm going to give you anybody that wants a copy of this presentation. I can email it to you. Okay. Again, another one, the Eccles Great Diamond Bypass, 13.3 billion. Indo-Guyanese, Chinese, African Guyanese for the first time we're seeing. Yep. Very small. That's the token that we want to show that we did something. Please go forward. I'm going to tell you when to stop. Right. So from the 21.1 billion, only 17% was awarded to an African Guyanese, and that was actually a joint venture with an Indian Guyanese. 82.5% of the Ministry of Housing, three largest projects were awarded to Indian and foreign Guyanese. And again, we don't have anything against Indian business people or the Indian community. But we say if we're talking about a one Guyana, then we have to ensure that everybody can come to the table and participate in the wealth and in the boom that we are experiencing at home. Next slide, please. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail and call out the numbers and the names. They speak for themselves. So that's why we're actually showing you the presentation. Health, Ministry of Health, procurement of drugs and equipment. And these figures are for 2020 to 2022, but in fact, new GPC, even in the previous 23 years prior to 2015 of the PPP government, were the sole company allowed to purchase drugs for the government of Guyana, pharmaceutical drugs. Okay? So, of course, you can see in that very big industry how much was there. Okay, so the budgetary allocations, and this is important to understand how the monies are coming into specific communities, and therefore how the communities are able to expand and grow. And of course, in Region 4, which you all know, the capital of Guyana, most populous, 41% of the population receives resides in Region 4, and the allocation, of course, is 781,050, and I think that's actually million. It goes on to Region 6, 15% of the population, as opposed to Region 4, 41% of the population. And you can see the vast disparity. 962, 500. And then, of course, Region 3 is only 18% of the population residing in Region 3, but they're receiving more than where 40% of the population resides and is receiving. These are budgetary allocations, right? I told you it's not nice. Next one, please. So the messages you can see there is that there's specific communities that are being allowed to grow and expand. And as Nima would have shared in her presentation, specific groups that are being attacked. In fact, I don't remember whether it was Mocha, but one of those cases where the government came to the public and said, we're having to break down these homes because these folks are squatters. And it was Okmaka. And they broke down the homes, but the very next day, the president of Guyana was in an Indo community where squatters were residing, and they were giving out titles. I couldn't remember which one. And they were giving out the titles. So the day before we break the houses, but the next day we can give titles to a certain group who don't look like me. Right. That's true. The water and electricity, the infrastructure was in there. Okay. In terms of the petroleum blocks, I know David and Vince made reference to it. You will see we are not even in the game. Next slide, please. Kanji block, awarded the 4th of March, an Indian Guyanese. The Kaitro block, awarded to a Portuguese company. And unfortunately, some of these blocks were not even advertised. So it's not even as if we could come up with the funds amongst ourselves from the diaspora, international finance, or whatever. We were excluded from the game. Could you continue? I said that there is no advertisement for the offer of the sale of any offshore oil blocks. No African Guyanese or African Guyanese entity has ever been awarded an offshore block. And again, if we're going to build a country that is stable, that provides opportunities for everyone, these kinds of facts have to change. And if it means like the US did many years ago, and many countries have had to deliberately start some kind of program to address the imbalance, it has to happen. Has to happen. You cannot lock out more than 40% of the population and say to them, you don't count in your own country, where our foreparents shed their blood to build this country. Next one. We can continue. Again, I said I will share it, but let's go to gold. 11 licenses were granted to 9 Indian Guyanese, 2 African Guyanese. Right? So we're not even saying, well, you know, let's try and do a 50-50 thing. Let's be fair. We're not going out to the indigenous community and saying to them, and many of those communities have their small mining, how can we build them up? Can we get the indigenous, the Amerindians in this game? So these numbers don't look like this. I think just go through. I don't think there's any other key ones. Same thing in Quarry. We don't have much time. But so I'm going to stop there. And as I said, the presentation is available for everyone. I think you get the message. I want to close with one observation. On Facebook, I think it was last year, a Guyanese businessman, and I'll call his name because he put it on his Facebook page. It was public knowledge, but some of you may not know. But on his Facebook page, Terence Campbell actually raised a very important discussion and revealed that he had friends, close friends, Indo-Guyanese, who were receiving a totally different interest rate from the bank. Same bank, different interest rates allocated to Indo-Guyanese business people. And of course, Terence Campbell is an Afro-Guyanese business person. What is sad about that is that in any normal country, the Bankers Association, the Minister of Finance, the head of the central bank should have all stepped forward and made a statement saying, no, this cannot be right. This is not the system and the way we do things in the banking sector. Please, Mr. Campbell, come in and speak with us so we can investigate this situation and we could find a suitable remedy. Nobody said anything. The information was put out there, and what's the big deal? Because you are a different hue, you pay, and your hair different, you pay a different interest rate. When it comes to the construction in those roads, I want you to know that in Lamaha Gardens, I have a good friend who in the rainy season opens her gate for some of the residents in Sophia. The mothers come with the children. They go, they have their school shoes and socks in a bag. They come with their rubber slippers because where they live, there's no proper roads. It's red dirt and they have to walk through the slush. And because she's at the part of Lamaha Gardens, they go and they wash their feet and mommy takes out the towel or the wash rag and dry their feet. And then they put on the school shoes and socks to go to school. There are taxis that do not go into these areas during the rainy season. There are children who obviously will not go to school during the rainy season. And we know what those kids look like. Thank you very much.
All right. So Mr. Ford, we're gonna end with you, and right after we'll have a relatively brief discussion where we'll take a couple of questions for the panelists. Thank you so much, MP Kathy Hughes, for that bit of information. Well presented.
Thank you. Good afternoon, I believe that having listened to my colleagues, there's not much more for me to say. But I believe that there's one important thing that I must say, which I believe that we need to put very clearly in this room and all of those persons who are listening to us, the context and the history and the basis for the claim for reparations in relation to the lands and the basis upon which African Guyanese are entitled to what they're asking for. And when we understand that, we understand that there could be no justification, no rationale for the continuous racist acts being perpetuated by this government. And I believe that in every home, in every pocket, we must have what I'm about to read. It must become our code. We must raise our children up for them to understand what is it they are the inheritors of. And I would read from you the Venn report of 1948. This is the most concise and precise and definitive statement of the sacrifice and the contribution of African people to the development of Guyana. And the relevant part starts, it stated that the Africans, and I quote, had driven back the sea and had cleared, drained, and reclaimed 15,000 square miles of forest and swamps. This is equivalent to 9 million acres of land were cleared, drained, were built by unpaid African labor. In the process of building these plantations, careful research has shown that the Africans installed the following. 1, 2,580 miles of drainage canals, trenches, and interbed drains. 2, 3,500,000 miles $100 million tons of earth had to be moved by the hands of African slaves. And the writers of the commission went on to state for emphasis in brackets, for which we ought to be perpetuating our claim for the entitlement for what we're asking for in terms of reparations. And it's interesting that because of time, we were able to merge two topics. Corruption, governance and exclusion, and dispossession points of view. The People's Progressive Party historically has always rejected the claim of the African Guyanese people. So when my colleague Kati would have spoken about all the different areas of Guyana where contracts to build roads are being laid, where infrastructure work being put out from Bath, anywhere in the part of this country, it was done originally African labor. Already the PPP has always rejected the contribution, the legitimate contribution of Africans to the development of Guyana. It's not taught in the schools. It's not discussed in society. So somehow people are believing that this somehow happened. The villages somehow failed to provide education. And it is documented in the annals of the parliament that every time the issue of an African Land Rights Commission came up, the PPP voted against it on each and every occasion. There are 3 documented dates. In 2004, when I believe it was ACDA, raised the issue, they modified the motion and rejected the issue of the Land Rights Commission. In 2007, a motion was presented by the now deceased but distinguished Member of Parliament, Deborah Bakker, and they voted against it. And recently, I think it was in 2017 or 2018, they rejected and stood up in Parliament and rejected the whole concept of a Lands Commission. Now, the Lands Commission is important because it will establish and allow a definitive statement and establishment of an inventory of lands that can be considered African ancestral lands. It is important because the next step will be to establish the legal framework to protect those lands from coming out of our control. There will have to be some special trust arrangement which will have to be put in place to make these lands capable of remaining in our control and still being able to be monetized in the modern financial system. So I got very upset and very angry of reparations when the country that he leads owes the African Guyanese people everything, including the dignity of our people. It's unfortunate that in our country, despite how hard we try, seem to be tied to race. And it is in the PPP's purely racist interests, to continue to reject the right to land by the African people. It is in their interest to continue to reject the right to compensation to land. Samson spoke. It is important for us to understand that this is the basis for our development. Because then, not shoes, not clothes, not to go to shows. They didn't go to Bujabantan and Juve and Stinking Dirty. They laid the foundation for independent people. And we can stand and go no further than first seeking to acknowledge what they did, to recover it, and to build. This government will never concede this to us. From their point of view, any concession on the land issue is the liberation of our people. Is the liberation of our people. So there could be no social cohesion, no equity, no equal access, no economic and social justice without the settlement and the determination of this land issue. Thank you very much.
Rickford, how are we on time? It's about 6:30.
30 seconds, Darren. We have to leave the building shortly before they put us out.
Good afternoon, everyone. During the 2017, 2017 President David Granger would have commissioned a commission to ancestral lands. There is a report. Ms. Olive, we submitted that report to the UN, right? Which makes several recommendations for African ancestral lands and so forth. Another thing, what is essential, and Mr. Ford, what we have witnessed as attorneys over the years with African persons, that we don't like leave will. We don't like leave will, and we don't like the probate estate. And because of that, we see what is transpiring in places like Kingali and so forth. I don't know Black brothers, our Indo brothers and sisters, they always leave a piece of paper, something document whatever is there. So we must encourage ourselves to leave documents. Because what we find, if 2-3 generations pass, one piece of plot of land is hundreds of persons entitled to that one single plot of land. Thank you.
Thank you. One other question, and anybody else? Okay. 30 seconds.
Good evening. Ask any question. I'm here to voice my concern. When it comes to the Venezuelans that are now living in Guyana, we know they're refugees, and every country accepts refugees. But my concern is, how are we monitoring Terry from was in the GDF, how we dominate any society? First, we plant our operatives, gather information, find out their weak spots, and that is how we hit them. All right? As is right now, it is on record that Venezuelan military operatives are in Guyana spying on us. I am very concerned about this, and this is something we need to look into in Guyana. Thank you very much.
Thanks. The government of Guyana is not that sophisticated to think about that and plan for that. They're busy. They're busy planning. You notice that they're not concerned about the people in Buxton and Haslington and Golden Grove, but they're facilitating. They're planning and spending money to assimilate the Spanish-speaking Venezuelans in Guyana, and providing services like putting police in Spanish on vehicles so they could understand. So listen, it's about electoral politics, huh? Their plan is to give them to bring some people from Haiti and Nigeria and Ethiopia. It's all a wee country. Sorry, go ahead, doctor.
Quickly, Kathy. Powerful numbers. The one that stood out, and I like numbers, was the allocation to the 3 regions. Something, I didn't. Region 3, which is West Demerara, and the quarantine, if you add it up, it's 33% of the population. The numbers is like close to 2. What is it? Was 2 billion. Yeah. Region 4 with the capital. You would always expect the capital city would, for whatever reason, would be higher. Region 4 with 41% is 700 million. So here you have 43% of the population receiving close to 2 billion, and 41% receiving 700 million. I mean, that tells it right, it's incredible. Taking out the advertisement to publish those numbers.
We plan to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question.
15 seconds. I just noticed you just briefly hit on that policia on the cars.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if the opposition has taken any action on this, and it was unilaterally decided.
I just wake up one morning and say they were putting
We were just as surprised.
As you. We had to Google the word.
So so what are we gonna do about this?
Well, look.
All right, thank you. Let me ask.
If I may respond to
Go
that.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
microphone.
concern is real and it is understood. We sounded the alarm, I think it was last year, when they brought the Registration of Births and Deaths Act to the National Assembly. And I pointed out that what they were doing was whittling away at the requirements to be given a Guyanese birth certificate. So what is happening now across Guyana is that you have a web of complicit justices of the peace because they've watered it down so much that all it is required is for JP to confirm that you were born in this village to this that is the entree into the electoral system. Now, we have been speaking about these things, and I want to make this one final point. It's very, very important that you follow us on social media to understand what is happening. Remember, we do not have access to the formal state media and the press. And these are all matters that we continue to raise. And we continue to raise it in the National Assembly. We have indicated our concerns about national security. The advisor has sounded his concerns about the fact of Venezuelans of military age in Guyana, and we have no means of tracking and tracing them. So it is a real and present concern that we have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Give the panel a round. I'm seeing everybody with their suitcases, grabbing their folders and I want to thank everybody. I want to say before the final words, we plan to, one, as I said earlier, have this Guyanese Washington conference, legislative conference, every year going forward now. We know next year we're not gonna put it so close to the end of Congress so the Republicans can hear and try to shut the government down and keep the that was a joke. That was a joke. But you know, we had a good time on the Hill today. While we were there, they were actually having votes. Okay, we're leaving very shortly. I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you for coming here. All 100 and something delegates and special guests for coming here. Give yourselves a round of applause. I want to thank the opposition leader and the delegate. Give them a round of applause. I want to thank all the presenters for giving us your time. Melanie, thank you. Edward Matins, George, thank you. And everybody who came. Listen, this means a lot to us. Released it to the public. It took the place by storm. You guys came into Washington and took the place by storm. When we walked into the Capitol, one of the young men said, "There's a thief from Guyana, right?" Thank Bart Jack there for attacking it. It got a lot of attention, law enforcement attention, more attention from the public, more attention from Congress. Wasn't this a good experience? Was it a good delegates who took time out from your job? This is amazing. We did this thing during the week. People took leave from their jobs. We really appreciate it. And to all of you, the viewing public, members here at home, for the support you give us. We thank you for the support you give us. And I want to say this. You guys at home looking haven't seen the representation here. We have young people, we have women, we have people from all races, all age groups. I saw somebody with a cane. Thank MP. He wasn't gonna miss this. Flew in from Guyana to help us. We're so grateful. And also, Mr. Reed, Kevin Reed, who flew in from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you. We have people from New Mexico. We have people from Dallas, Texas, Florida, Arizona, British Virgin Islands. Mr. Benjamin, thank you. British Virgin Islands, Canada, Atlanta, all the way from New York, Jamaica, Nigeria. Wow, I'm missing somebody. New Jersey, Tennessee. Where the Tennessee man there? The man's from Tennessee and Christiansburg and Linden. He doesn't want us to say Linden. Christiansburg, Linden. Am I missing anybody? Oh, I deliberately. No, I know what we're doing, man. Connecticut. Who's from Connecticut? Connecticut, wave your hand. Oh, wow. Where in what? Which town in Connecticut? Connecticut. And then we have everybody here from Maryland. Maryland in the house. They were a host. DC. Maryland and Washington, D.C. Listen. And I am told by counsel that MP David Patterson even came from illegal detention to be here at the conference. What a statement. David, we really appreciate the time you and your family took. Listen, from the time here, Katina easy, you know. I want Guyana to know Katina not easy. From the time David got turned back, trying to break down everything, David got to be here. And I'm happy that the AFC family and the PNC, APNU family, and the CGID family, and the Ipadaji, and IFAD. Tell us what IFAD is. A lot of people are new to IFAD. Just what the acronym mean. Discriminate Institute for Action and Organizing Committee. Thank you. Ipadaji as well. Legal advisor, treasurer, Lincoln Lewis, who badged the right. So it's a very diverse organization. Don't forget the WPA. You know, we can't. I know they're small, but it's Talawa, according to the Jamaicans. The WPA is here. Am I missing anybody? PNC, APNU Association. Man, y'all is PNC. Wow. I hope the PNC leader, I know you left, but NAR said they're separate and apart from PNC. They are. I know. They are
PNC North America. Did I say it right? So why y'all saying no? Oh, sorry. Let me say it again. People's National Congress North America region. Okay, they want me to say it properly. North American region of the People's National Congress Reform. All right. So we have the Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy. That was a joke. Next thing you know, Dennis Shabral going to say, Rick for Burke now, CTID is running things in Washington. That was a joke. But seriously, I had a good time. Last night we socialized at society. Me even know the Sablukat party. No, I ain't calling them. People party. No, listen, we got socialized. Tonight we got to go to Swahili Lounge, which is a Kenyan lounge and restaurant and bar here. They're going to host us. We're going to learn to speak in Kenyan dialect, and we're going to eat Kenyan, Swahili. No, don't cut it off yet. And we're going to dance some. And yes? Oh, when you finish, right, we have one more activity, very important. Once we disconnect from, when we end the live stream, as we do so right now. Thank you, everybody, for talking. Yeah, I'm talking to the public now. Thank you guys for supporting us, the moral encouragement you gave us. Yesterday we had 277,000 people who, yeah. Oh, Sharon says share the live, share the thing. So we want the Guyanese people, as we close the live stream, on a serious note. We in the diaspora, we see you, we hear you, we're in the struggle with you. Just don't outsource the struggle to us. Struggle in Guyana too. We're fighting here to make sure you have the right tourists, that they'll speak out when they see violations in Guyana. They will speak out, do their job to protect people. The courts must do their job to protect people. It is sad. It is sad that we have to come to Washington to highlight the atrocity that the democratic institutions in Guyana have failed our people. About the atrocity, what? This is exactly what happened in South Africa. This is how they began to dismantle apartheid. And this is how we will dismantle the apartheid government in Guyana. We will mobilize the world. We will mobilize the world to fight the apartheid regime in Guyana. And if we have to start a revolution in the diaspora so that that revolution can catch fire in Guyana, we're going to start a revolution. We didn't come to Washington to play. Thank you, everybody. And for supporting Sherrod.